In the Crimson Flower route of Fire Emblem Three Houses, Dimitri was almost an entirely different character, and upon further review, this is one of the most intriguing character developments in the game to me, so let's explore that. I won't lie, Two-Eyed Dimitri kinda feels cursed when you're used to the eye patch. I've got my own ridiculous headcanon that this dude ripped out his own eye and just shoved it down some poor Empire sap's throat just to prove a point that, Actually, I'm not going there. I'd like to stay monetized, thank you. Anyway, this is a long overdue video, for it was a 500 like milestone goal in my bigger analysis video of Dimitri's overall character arc. Y'all crushed that goal, and as much as I wanted to release this video after my Fire Emblem 4 story review, that video is taking way longer to produce. I didn't want to keep y'all hanging any longer, especially since this video was never supposed to be long to begin with. So let's finally get it. As I stated in my first video on Dimitri, Crimson Flower's depiction of him is so vastly different that he deserved to be analyzed separately. You're not seeing him spaz out like a rabid animal, which is so weird considering he's one of the more major antagonists of Edelgard's route. You'd think the writers would screw him over like they did with Rhea and show him in the worst possible light without context, but Dimitri's own route did that instead. The irony is incredible. In Crimson Flower, while he's still got that edge to him, Dimitri's demeanor is reminiscent of his White Cloud's counterpart, eager to seek out his own sense of justice while still managing to rein in the Boar side of him, and establish himself as the true ruler of the Kingdom of Fargus. Unlike Azure Moon, Dimitri's crowned the king much earlier. Makes sense, he didn't abandon his people like the Savage Boar version of him did in Azure Moon. This Dimitri, despite being haunted by the past, managed to muster the strength to remain sane and ready to lead, but how? Sure, the absence of Byleth in his corner played a role, but Byleth's only with him during Azure Moon, and ironically enough, Dimitri's depicted at his worst with Byleth in his own faction. Well, mainly because every other route doesn't have the benefit of Dimitri's perspective, so he just come off as insane in other routes with minimal context. So that leaves another key factor influencing his demeanor shift. Dedue. If you don't complete Dedue's paralogue in every route it's available, he dies in Dimitri's place, as the Boar Prince was set up to be executed in all routes except for Crimson Flower. But despite the player's completion of the paralogue, Dimitri still believed Dedue, his closest and most loyal friend, perished in his place, leaving him all alone to fight both his darkness and the voices his deluded mind suffered from. By the time Dedue returns and reveals he's still alive, it's too late. Dimitri's already too far deep into the rabbit hole. But Dedue's circumstances are far too different in Crimson Flower. Not only did Dimitri not go through the betrayal and execution attempt, but Dedue, based on context clues from their exchanges and the narration, was a constant presence in Dimitri's corner for the full 5 years of war. And I believe that Dedue's constant support and companionship off-screen played a pivotal role in how Dimitri behaves in Crimson Flower.
I can always rely on you. Just watch, my friend. We will prevail. I will not fail to get revenge for all who have fallen.
Chad Dedue probably saved my boy's f***ing eye. But what's the extent of this change? How different is Dimitri exactly? Well, he's not threatening people around him for one. Normal Dimitri, god damn, this is considered normal, was prone to lash out at the slightest opposition in opinion, acted several times more irrational, and always dismissive of his companions. Crimson Flower Dimitri, however, is just kinda chill. He treated those he conversed with respect and valued unity and companionship much more. He even expressed remorse for the fallen comrades we were forced to mow down in order to get to him. The only glimpses of the Boar are in his final moments, which compared to the other routes is still tame as hell, and telling Rhea he's only got his eyes on one prey, which, speaking of that line, it's even more indicative of his resolve to control himself and only focus on his main goals: revenge, albeit directed at the wrong person, and performing his duty as king. But this also presents some problems with consistency. Even when he and Edelgard are talking in the pre-combat dialogue, he's a lot more composed here compared to his overeager and violent demeanor in his Gronder field exchanges. That's why Crimson Flower kind of weirded me out with its writing choices, despite me appreciating this what-if version of him. If they wanted the player, someone who may have never played Azure Moon prior to Crimson Flower, to be convinced he's changed into this savage monster who's willing to do anything to win, they kind kinda had to show that a bit better. Showing him in a mostly positive light here is somewhat counterproductive to me, other than just showing the player that the conflict in Photon is not black and white. If someone like Felix defects to the Empire, he expresses ad nauseum on how he's disgusted with Dimitri's change, but Felix himself is an unreliable example considering he over-exaggerates Dimitri's negatives in general, despite the root. He's really just there to serve as someone to spark enough intrigue in order to encourage the player to experience Azure Moon, just like how Dimitri's ghost in Silver Snow sparks curiosity on what the hell happened in his character arc. Then there's Hubert and Edelgard's commentary before the battle at the Telltale Plains. I'll admit that I misremembered Hubert's lines initially when I made my first Dimitri video, since a well thought out comment stood out to me there, then I reread the lines myself afterward. Hubert never stated Dimitri was a beast or anything, but he and Edelgard merely remarked on how Dimitri no longer fought like an honorable warrior, and that his tactics and the kingdom's moves were indicative of this supposed change of character. While that may be true, I still found it a bit odd to use that as an example to bring awareness to Dimitri's changes, when there could have been better opportunities to highlight it. I mean, they're at bloody war, not school. Why would Dimitri employ more naive tactics and announce himself, especially when they went to a school specifically tailored towards military logistics and combat? Plus, with the presence of Byleth on the Empire side, both the Kingdom and Church were essentially cornered animals at this point in the climax. Anyone would be desperate to turn the tides of battle by any means necessary, when this was quite literally the Kingdom's last stand. When they lose here, they're just done. The remnants of the Kingdom and the Kingdom itself will merge into the Empire. I just felt this was a weird example for the writers to lean on, considering the nature of warfare, but I can ignore it since Dimitri's story isn't even the focus on Edelgard's part, and not like Hubert and Edelgard were wrong. The timing was just off to me. Though I guess with how rushed Three Houses was overall, they probably couldn't find anywhere else to mention it. With how they couldn't even find a proper point in the game to reveal Claude's real name, that's embarrassingly telling enough. But I'm just saying, if they really wanted a more accurate portrayal of Dimitri's arc, this wasn't the best way to do it. Showing him as mostly mentally stable, while contrarily other characters are treating him as if he were the same rabid, one-eyed animal with a lance and Azure Moon, shows the inconsistencies in the writing. Due to the short nature of the route, I just felt like more than one chapter of Edelgard's army encountering Dimitri directly was necessary. An extra chapter could have fully shown us how this version of Dimitri behaves in opposition to the normal one. Crimson Flower does a little too much telling rather than showing from my perspective. Of course, I understand that it's a bit much to ask for Crimson Flower to focus on portraying Dimitri correctly. After all, if they can screw over Rhea by depicting her a million times worse than she actually was, this comes to no surprise. This isn't his story, and circumstances were different enough on this route to somewhat justify the change. One of the biggest points of the route splits was to see just how much Byleth's decisions impacted this morally gray world at large. Maybe whenever I make my Edelgard focus video, whenever that'll be, I can get more into that. As the years go by and with all my revisits to Three Houses' story, I'm warming up to her and her perspective more and more. I need to play Crimson Flower again though before I can even consider making something like that. Back to Dimitri though, I still think this slight deviation in his character is pretty cool. While him still having both eyes may be unexplained in game, I'd like to think that some symbolism played a part in his design choice. One of the things I loved about Dimitri's base design, something that I didn't touch on in my original video, is that the eye patch can also be representative of Dimitri's arc. He's dubbed the King of Delusions due to both his hallucinations of dead people who aren't actually there, and his deluded sense of justice that's thrusted him on this destructive path he's known for. I've always felt like the eye patch was a creative design choice to represent how Dimitri has blinded himself from both the truth and how the lies obscured the right path. And the one eye available to him represents that his obscured view of the truth only allows him to walk down a narrow path that he can't clearly see without some sort of intervention. Crimson Flower Dimitri, on the other hand, lacking an eye patch, may very well be symbolic of Dimitri never fully surrendering to his inner demons, despite the truth still eluding him. Him stepping to the mantle after all war broke out, carrying himself like a proper ruler, and maintaining his sanity shows that he's got his priorities straight. This Dimitri has no obstructions to the right path. His one and only path is to be the savior king. And now that the Empire, equipped with a Byleth brandishing the sword of the creator, is here to take his kingdom away, he needed unity more than ever to face such a foe. Boar Dimitri has no place here. That's my interpretation anyway. It just highlights how much different things could have been for him if Dedue was always there for him. In a way, Crimson Flower may have shown us just how important Dedue was to Dimitri and vice versa when you omit their support conversations, on how both circumstance and the support of that one solid rock in Dimitri's life could have prevented him from falling into pieces. It's funny because this perspective helped me appreciate Dedue's absence in the first half of Azure Moon. As cool as this more composed Dimitri is, he's nowhere near as compelling and fun, let's be real, of a journey as the deranged lunatic version. Being forced to develop without Dedue lends itself to a stronger character development for me. But I'd love to make a video on this Dusker Chad himself, but let me know what you guys think first. Don't worry, it won't be another video like based goal or anything like that, just comment below. But as much as I hated how Dedue was handled in Azure Moon, I can better understand why he needed to not be there for the sake of a more impactful positive change arc for Dimitri, something that I went into depth with my other video, which if you haven't watched it already, or if you just want a refresher of stuff I've already talked about, because it has been 8 months, you can check that video out here. I know I glossed over obvious key points of Dimitri's character arc on this video, but 9 times out of 10, I've already talked about anything you've possibly got on your mind over there. So see ya in that video, but regardless, stay chill, y'all.